I think what's remarkable about the moratorium process, and it took us a while. I mean, we had a lot of public hearings, about 18 of them, I think, across, most of the state. I went. I don't know how many we went from Asheville to the coast, and through that process, we began to understand one another. We didn't always come to the same point, but we began to understand one another. And so, through that process, the remarkable thing is that when we got to the end, we had about 5 major recommendations. And all 5 of those got approved by the General Assembly. That's a remarkable thing. Probably never happen again. Bit difficult to explain what piece of research is going to do and what it would do. I mean, for example, people have a hard time understanding social science research. It's a bunch of soft. Well, in the fisheries issues, that was important.
So can you give an example of some of the types of research that your group did to provide information for this project?
Okay, I tell you the projects. One of them was done by Barbara Garrity Blake. They tried to do an assessment of how people get into the fishery and stay there or get out, or why. Important information, because we're fixing to set up a mechanism here where people are going to have to opt. They're going to have to choose whether they're commercial fishermen or not. Not easy. We had another project done by Mike Orbach and Jeff Johnson on how is our fishery characterized? Who are they? Who are the major commercial types? And so on. So they developed a big chart of what our commercial fishery was, and through that characterization, we were able to set up a licensing structure that we still have today. We had another project. Let's see, it was a group of people to do a kind of a social science analysis of how rules and laws and things of that get passed and implemented. Out of that came how do we, what is the commission like? What do they do? How do you appoint them? How many can you have? What do they do? All of these kind of things. And they went about trying to analyze that in the context of how North Carolina operates in our social structure. And then they had what they call focus groups, where they went around and asked people, how do you like that? What if we do this? And through that process, that's how we came up with a 9-member commission. We also came up with how the Marine Fisheries Commission, the Division of Marine Fisheries, the Department of what used to be called Natural Resources, and how does that interact? How is this housed in the governance of our state? And what happens if the governor appoints these members versus if the legislature appoints these members, or if there's a joint? All those things. So they did really a nice piece of research on that issue. We may have had a couple of other research projects. I think we did 4 or 5. I've forgotten what they all were, but they were, had to do with how we were going about managing fisheries and manage it in a context of the society in which we live. That's hard.
Yeah, so you mentioned earlier that the big population growth in North Carolina in the 70s and 80s was a large part of trying to make sense of all these fishing licenses that were out there. What do you think it was about North Carolina in particular, though? Because, the South at large was having a big population boom at that time, and North Carolina my understanding was that we were sort of one of the first states to put forward something like this.
Yeah, and and years after that, we had several other states call and ask us how we did it. So I guess we were pioneers. But North Carolina is a unique place. First of all, geographically and climate, so on, we're sort of everything. We're the part between the subtropical and the northern temperate zones. We're the place where the currents get to come together. We're the most variable place in the world on weather. Cape Hatteras has the most variable weather system of any place anywhere in the world. So we're sort of in a transition zone, which we have something of everything. That's a hard place to be. And so that complicated what we do. Let's see, we are the only state that allows trawling and things like that in our inland waters. In fact, we have large acreages of inland waters. North Carolina is the third largest coastal waters in the United States, exceeded only by Alaska and Louisiana. So we're a big player. We have a unique ecosystem. We have a unique social system. We have a unique geographic system. We protrude out into the ocean a long ways, in case you haven't looked. And so here we are. We're kind of a unique place, and so why shouldn't we be unique? We are.